Oh, this is really bad. So important to understand, these women got into this relationship with this guy, contracts to live in his house, to engage in BDSM consensually. But then things turned criminal, police say. Police say that there was trafficking going on, sex assault going on, false imprisonment going on, that these people were subjected to abusive treatment. This is far beyond the scope of what they bargained for and illegal. What's going to happen with this case? This is stunning. This guy also a real estate agent, this defendant. All right, let's talk about it. I want to bring in former prosecutor. He's an attorney now in the private sector, Randolph Rice, on the program. Randolph, wow, you've seen a lot in your years practicing in criminal court. There's always something new, like a case like this. Tell me your initial impressions, please, as we get little bits of this testimony that came in on Friday.
Yeah, Julie, this is quite a wild one. I'm certainly going to say this is why preliminary hearings are so valuable to the defense, because this is really free discovery. The ability for the defense attorney to ask that investigator these very poignant, very direct questions to get information, draw information out that not only do you get that information, but you've now locked this investigator into that testimony that you can then use against her down the road at trial. I'm going to play my defense hat here, or put my defense hat on here and say I have a million questions about this case. First off, the contract, what did it say? Why is there a gap between the 2020 date of when she leaves the house and when she actually reports this in 2024 to the police? Why does she report this? I mean, there are a million questions that, yes, right now this may not seem logical to everyone else, but it may be logical in the world that these people were living in, and I think there's so much more to dig into right now in this case.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, wouldn't you love to see the contract, right, Randolph? You bring up a great point. What did these women want to do? You know, we're hearing what they didn't want to do, at least little bits of it from this investigator. I know there's a whole lot more. Taking a look at the criminal complaint, it's really stunning, the things that these women allege happened to them. It's horrific. So what were they bargaining for, and then what did they get? Yeah, apparently this guy, according to the criminal complaint, had a sex dungeon in the basement. And Randolph, you know, I have to wonder, like, did these women know him how? Did they meet him online? Had they visited the home prior to going there? So many questions, and I don't know when we'll hear from them. Let's talk about that, right? So at this juncture, the prosecutor's office is trying to protect them, right? That's evident, using the initials, all that. At what point do you think we're going to potentially see and hear from them in the public courtroom?
Well, they've certainly got some rights to be protected, and I think the state's going to try as long as they can to keep their names out of the public. But at some point in time, they're going to have to be identified in court if this case goes to trial. But here's another very important fact for the defense in this case, and I think it's very helpful to the defense. If you have multiple participants in these sex parties, that means the defense has more people that they could theoretically bring in to say, hey, look, AEK, which is who the state is identifying as the victim, AEK was a willing participant. At no time did she ever say stop, or did she ever say this wasn't comfortable, or did she ever bring it to us? And, you know, we were confident in the house. She never came to us and said anything. She never said, apparently she had employment that she was going to and they saw injuries. She never brought it up to her employers. So again, this makes me think that there maybe was a consensual relationship here, that AEK, the victim in this case, was willing to do these things. She knew full well what it may be and what may happen. And so that may give the defense some ground to argue on.
Always great insight from you, Randolph Rice. Thank you for all of that. There's more to this case. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we'll hear from an investigator talking about how one victim tried to escape the home. That's next. Okay, so this is a tricky case, no doubt. Let's talk a little bit about that, what it's like prosecuting a case like this one. Let me bring in our legal analyst guest, Randolph Rice. Randolph, harkening back to your time as a prosecutor and issues that can be uncomfortable, unconventional, sensitive. This case is involving all of those things. What are some of the things prosecutors are going to go through with these women privately, through their interview process, through the vetting process? Would you kind of walk us through some of the things that they're going to need to know in order to be equipped to bring this case?
Yeah, I mean, you first start off with any type of, these cases, listen, like Julie, like you said, these are very difficult cases because this is such sensitive topics. These are topics that typically are not discussed in general conversations. But what you do is you bring the victims in and you start off, at least I would do, and when we did this in the past, was you sort of say, look, these are going to be the ground rules. These are kind of be what to expect. Sort of client management, even though you're not the client in the defense sense, you're the client in the sense of the victim, saying, look, this is what to expect. Let me give you the worst case scenario, okay? And then you start working back up to what you think may happen so that they are prepared as they work through this case. And remember, they're still investigating. I'm sure they're collecting more statements, more evidence. So you really just give them the worst case scenario, and then you work backwards as to what you think may happen, but at least they expect or know what could happen.
Right, Randolph. You know, and it sounds like from what I'm reading in the complaint and then hearing in this hearing, it sounds like there was control going on in a couple ways: physical, emotional, coercive, and even financial control that these women had to contribute in order to live to the house. What about pieces of evidence? What things can you think of that these women could potentially put forward to substantiate their claims of what they say happened to them?
Yeah, I think forensics is going to be huge, because the talking about, and we see this in a lot of other cases, about text messages, phone calls back and forth, maybe voicemails have been left, but text messages oftentimes corroborate what a victim is saying on the stand. Let's say something happened back in 2020 and the victim says, you know, I didn't feel comfortable, or this assault happened. Okay, well, the defense say, well, why didn't you say something? Well, I did. Here are a series of text messages with my confidant, with my friend, with a partner, with somebody I felt comfortable with, to confirm at the time of the assault that it actually happened. So those are really big pieces of evidence. You know, there may be videos. I mean, look, it sounds like this was a strange house that they were all living in. Who knows? There may be even video cameras in that home that they may be able to find through a warrant or some sort of subpoena.
Right, Randolph. I'm going to leave you with one of the last lines in the complaint. I think this is very telling. It says the defendant would isolate them all from their family and would pit them against each other. And even though we know that there was, you know, this initial attraction, let's call it, with the BDSM relationships, what I see, Randolph, I'm sure you do too, is classic domestic violence, the triangulation and the isolation that we know occurs with batterers.
Yeah. I mean, this is a tactic that the military has used for years, until obviously they started outlawing some of it in certain situations, is where you isolate individuals, you put them in situations where they become desperate for some sort of outside connection or some sort of support system, and then you have more control over them, like they do to say, like the military may do to somebody that they want to interrogate. They want to get information out of, or they want to have control over them. The same tactic appears to be used here by this Mr. Chronister, who was separating these victims and trying to keep them from family and money, and even one saying he was going to threaten to take away their license. So You're right, Julie.
Exactly. Randolph Rice, always excellent analysis from you. Thank you for everything this morning. We'll be right back with more.